Greetings and welcome to another episode of Ad Astra, the Kansas Money Talks podcast. I'm Joe Blubaugh, joined by Mark Johnson and Bob Schwartz of Bob Schwartz Financial. You can learn more about them at bobschwartzfinancial.com. They have offices in Victoria, Kansas, as well as Silver Lake, Kansas, which is where we are today. And if you're watching us on YouTube, give us that thumbs up, subscribe, hit the like button, do all those things. We really appreciate you joining us and would like you to know when we put out a new episode every week. So today we're going to talk about the silent portfolio killer, and that is fees. So we're going to talk a little bit about fees. When people start investing, they probably don't think about the fees that can go along with investing. And if you're not paying attention to them, they can really sneak up and get you.
Yeah.
So,
yes, sir.
Yeah, lots to say there, guys.
Yeah, sorry.
Mark, maybe kick us off with, tell us a little bit about some of the different fees that we might see out there when you get into the investing world.
Yeah, so depending on who you're working with or what you're buying, there's all sorts of fees that could pop up when you're going through your investing experience. But the first thing would be management or advisory fees. This is what you're paying your advisor to actually manage your portfolio. The most common that you probably hear nowadays is something called an AUM fee, which is a percentage of how much money you have invested, and that number might be a half of, 0.5 all the way up to, we see companies that charge.
You ever seen a 0.5? You ever seen a 0.5?
I've seen them on, if you have over, whatever, 10 million. Yeah, $5 million. Yeah. And then up to 2%. So,
and before you go on to the next thing, I just want to define, you said AUM, that would be assets under management.
Yep.
Yes,
yep.
Okay.
Right. Also known sometimes as WRAP fees.
Yep.
What does WRAP stand for? Or is it
wrapping
just a term?
around. Yeah, just
gotcha.
I think if it is an acronym, I don't know what it is. But WRAP fees are strictly with mutual funds.
Gotcha.
Okay. They have to be a mutual fund portfolio, but that's sometimes you hear advisors refer to them as WRAP fees.
Yeah. I'd say the most common AUM fee we come across is 1% or a little bit over. That's pretty common. When we see things that are above 1%, it's becoming pretty expensive.
I would say under $500,000, the average we see, Mark's probably like 1.25%.
That's probably true, especially when we start talking about the other things added to their portfolio.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
My goodness, yes. Yeah.
So let's talk about some of those other things. What are some other expenses that people will come across?
Yeah. So the other thing we'll see in some of these accounts are mutual funds. Now, obviously, people who buy mutual funds are one of the most common things people buy in their portfolios. But what some people don't understand is there is an expense ratio for each one of the mutual funds you buy that also have 12B1 fees. They have front end, back end loads. But regardless, the mutual fund, every year there's an expense ratio that you are paying to own the fund.
So let's talk about how most people see a mutual fund purchase, where they're just doing a retail mutual fund purchase, not through a wrap account or a management account. They'll have a load up front many times, and the advisor will say, well, you pay this load up front when you buy it, but then that's it. Then you can get your money back out, whatever it's worth, but you do have to pay this 5% upfront fee.
Let's talk real quick, just so people understand. That load is, if you invest $100, that load would be $5 or 5%.
5%, yeah. And in most cases, sometimes 5.5%. But
okay.
So advisors say, well, that you'll pay that and then you're done. No, that's a commission, and that's earned up front. And then, as Mark said, then come the annual fees. Well, so many people that we visit with think, oh, once I'm in, there's no expense whatsoever. But just think about it. A mutual fund has got to make, they've got to make money. They're not in business for free. Secondly, your representative, when you call him and you need something, you hope to have some sort of relationship where they will take action. So the 12B1 fee that Mark referred to is a fee paid by mutual funds that actually comes back to the representative, okay? And so if somebody says to you, hey, we make a commission up front and that's it,
That's not it.
that's not it. And that's not how it works. And that's one of the places where the fees are well hidden by our industry.
Yeah, and that's when I first started investing, and I really didn't understand all that. I looked at those expense ratios, and I thought, oh, well, that expense ratio is 2%. That's not that big of a fee. That doesn't seem like much. But after that first year, I started doing the math, and wow, those fees add up.
Oh, and when the market's going up, as we've been in a bull market basically since '08, we've had some, 2022, we had a recession during COVID, we did. But basically, we've been in a very positive market. And, my portfolio was up 16% last year. Well, it would have been up 18 if you wouldn't have had that 2% drag. I mean, but you don't pay attention to it when you're making 16. It's when clients lose 12% that they realize how bad it's hitting them. But you need to realize that, Joe, as you did early on, that fees matter. Yes. And we're not saying that there shouldn't be some fees. You need professional help, but make sure it's not eating up your seed money.
And if you're going to pay those fees, you want to make sure your portfolio is being actively managed. If all your person did was buy you one mutual fund and then put it on reinvest and capital gains and dividend reinvestment and just sits there, what are you paying? First of all, they shouldn't charge you for an AUM fee for that because hopefully it's an A share and you paid it up front. But if they are, what are you paying for? What are you paying for?
And we see that all the time.
Yeah. And this is a legit question because I don't know the answer to this. When I first got into investing, and that was about that 2008 timeframe, I think the standard there were loads. You paid up front and then you paid the commission, the expense ratio. You paid the expense ratio on the mutual fund. Am I correct in saying that loads, maybe not 100% have gone away, but the industry has changed enough that a lot of the times those loads are now gone, and there are definitely ways to get around those?
It changed long before '08. It
Okay.
really did. When I first started in the industry, which was, grass was brown and we used horses to get to work, but back then everything was a load. There was a new company called Vanguard that had started in '72. I started in '77. It was no load. Nobody understood it. And then there was one other one called 20th Century that I was aware of out of Kansas City, which is now American Century. So they were there then, but they weren't preached about. And of course now ETFs. I mean, it's just a whole different ball game. But our industry, or the mutual fund industry, is very, very good. They're like the banking industry. They have a huge niche, and they are very good at marketing within that. But we try to make people understand that not all of them are equal.
Well, and before we move on to the last question I have, or observation, I guess, is the other thing I remembered was they had to tell you what those expense ratios were. I mean, that's, if you read the prospectus, they have to do it.
Right.
But they also bury that fee in the returns, as you kind of mentioned, where it is just so easy to not notice it.
When we do a portfolio analysis, and a lot of times people will have 15 mutual funds within their brokerage account. And we'll go through each fund and we get what are called the fund fact sheets. And on that, it tells exactly what the fund fee is. But I'm telling you, it's something that our industry, that when I started, I didn't even know about the annual fee. Otherwise they said, here's a briefcase, go get them, Tiger. And there's back then an 8.5% upfront load. And I thought that was it. As an advisor, I thought that was it. And then my boss said, no, they didn't tell you everything in school. There's an annual fee in there. like, what the heck? Industry's good at hiding stuff.
Yeah. And let's move on, because once again, when you start talking percentage-wise and you think, okay, 1% here, 2% there, it doesn't seem like a lot. But Bob, in your experience, why do fees matter?
I'm going to use a 10-year example because I think maybe Mark's going to talk about a little longer period. But if you have a portfolio that makes 10% over 10 years on $100,000, or 9%, otherwise take a percent off for the drag of a high fee advisor or fund family, that difference is going to be over $23,000 on that $100,000, $259,000 versus 236, 1% difference. Yet we'll sit and go, well, we charge 1% for that. People just go, okay, that's reasonable, because the bank's charging me 6,
Yep.
or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But fees matter, and that's why we wear ours on our lapel almost. We charge 0.7%, period, and no trade fees, no sell fees, no nothing. And we seldom buy a mutual fund.
Right.
Because of those expenses. We want people to know, okay, we're going to have a 0.7% drag, and are these guys worth it? We think we are. That's for them to judge. But it's worked very well for us. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. And Mark, I'll maybe ask you a little bit different way of saying it. And the part that I think people miss, I know I missed it, but when I started doing the math, it's not just that expense or that annual fee that goes along with it. It's the missed opportunity of that money not working for you anymore.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying, with that first year that I put money into the market, it wasn't just the fees that I took into consideration. I realized, I happened to time the market just perfectly when I started investing in 2008. As you mentioned, that was kind of the start of the bull run. And it wasn't just the fees up front that got me, or the annual fees. It was the fact that I didn't compound the money that I paid them.
Right.
And that's the hidden part of the fees in there.
And in a dividend-paying portfolios of American companies, which is what we specialize in, during market times, and markets perform to an average over time.
Yep.
So we've gone through a very good period. We're going to go through some slow periods at some point in time. And when we do, those dividends are what carry a portfolio. And if your dividends are getting eaten up by fees, that's certainly going to make a huge difference in your pocketbook.
So, Mark, let's look at a little bit longer term.
Okay.
Bob kind of gave us that 10-year. What happens over maybe a 20 or even a 30-year period?
So if you invested $100,000 and for a 30-year period, and let's say you got 8%,
Average return of 8%.
Average return. You would have $1 million by the time that 30 years is up. Sounds pretty great. If you had a 1% fee, you would only have $760,000. If you had a 2%, $574,000.
Wow.
That kills your compounding, like you're talking about. What some people don't understand is they think, oh, my advisor, whatever, with whatever ABC large company, whatever it is, they charge you 1.25%, but their returns are a little better. I'm like, well, they've also bought you 8 mutual funds, and your expense ratios, you're really paying about 3%. With the amount of mutual fund expense ratios you pay, and your management fee, and guess what? They're buying every week, and there's a charge for all that's buying that they're doing for some reason, because we know now there's pretty much should be none of that. Like, that's what those things compound. Those fees compound, and what you see there is a huge difference in your portfolio if you're not paying attention.
So you've kind of already mentioned it, but let's talk about how those fees can trap you, how they get disguised maybe. We've kind of talked about it a little bit, but let's go to mutual funds versus ETFs. there are pretty large difference in fees on those, if I understand that correctly.
Huge.
Yep, and it matters if they're passive or indexing, or if they're passive
managed.
funds. But mutual funds carry a higher expense ratio than ETFs. ETFs can track the exact same thing.
What's great about our industry
Yeah.
is there's paradigm shifts. Charles Schwab was a paradigm shift back when discount brokerage started. I remember the first stock I ever bought. It was from somebody I played football with in college. He became a stockbroker, and I bought 100 shares of stock that were $400, and my fee was $250 to buy that.
Yeah.
And that was just that was just what it was. There was that upfront brokerage fee. Well, that's gone today.
Yep.
Mutual funds owned it, and they've built it, and they've got 50 different funds in every family. But then all of a sudden, here come the ETFs. And now everybody's got ETFs,
Yep.
much more competitive, and the managed money, the Fidelities, the Vanguards, the American funds have been at the front of that. Okay, but so many in our industry, I think we've tried to be proactive in grabbing on to fees matter. We've been this way for 24 years on this fee structure. It has really, really worked for us. But so many advisors and so many companies haven't made any change, and they're still out peddling front-load mutual funds and peddling that they're more attractive because you pay your fee up front, and then you're done. No, you're not.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
So you mentioned ETFs. I want to define that real quick. It's electronically traded funds, correct? That's
They're
what an
a
ETF
basket
stands
of
for.
individual stocks.
Gotcha.
So, the ETF Vanguard's 500 ETF is the 500 largest companies in the United States.
Yeah. VOO.
Yeah, VOO. And I think Mark brings up something that I thought was very, very important. With no fees, money will grow to $1 million at 8%, $100,000, 30 years. Okay, and with a 2% fee, it grows to $574,000. With a 1% fee, $760,000. It is all the studies that they've done. A CFP brings over a long period of time 1.5% to the table of return. Okay, so can you manage your money yourself? Absolutely, absolutely. And I have friends that do, and they do a great job of it. But you have to be of a certain mentality. You have to, if you're getting in and out of the market, you need to not be managing your money. If you're, if you're a 19-year-old kid on Robinhood and you're trading daily, that's fine because you're learning how to get burnt and what not to do. But if you're 50 and you're jumping out of the market because you don't like the way things are going politically in this country or whatever, you're making a mistake. And that's where us at 0.7%, I feel like we bring so much to the table because we're going to keep you engaged with the market. We're going to keep you inundated with information that allows us to help you stay in the market during bad times.
And then some of those firms that we're talking about that haven't moved away, they're almost double dipping, aren't they? Where they charge an asset under management fee, but then they're also getting fees from the funds and the mutual funds that they're buying for their clients?
That's exactly what it is.
We'll see that on occasion. Not where there's a front-end sales charge, but there'll still be 12B1 fees to come along with the assets under management fees. Here's the other thing that can be bad, is a broker can work for a broker-dealer, and that broker-dealer can be getting 12B1 fees while the representative is getting management fees, and you're getting double hit. And so consequently, we try to avoid those. We have accounts that come in with mutual funds in them, and when they do, we will blend that money over into our strategy. But with any of our individual investing, we're either buying CDs or T-bills. that have no fees with them, or individual American companies that have no fees.
The other thing that I would, when we're talking about fees, is you should look into your 401k.
I was just going to ask
Yeah,
that.
like your company has options in there, and you need to make sure that you are allocating it to where you are paying the least amount of fees as possible. That whoever's doing it is getting something. Just that it costs to have a 401k. But what you can control is what is in your portfolio, hopefully. If you have a good 401k, some people don't realize there are good 401ks and there are bad 401ks.
Well, and there's good choices in just about every one we look at.
Yeah.
There are great choices, very low fees.
Yep.
And then there's some very high fee mutual funds that are sexy,
Yep.
that have a sexy name. And and if you need help with your 401k in terms of asset allocation, we do that all the time for folks, and we just do that as a courtesy for folks that need help with their 401k, because you're not getting it from a 25-year-old kid. Excuse me for somebody being 25. You're not getting that from a young person that has just been hired by a 401k company to come out and do enrollment. They're there to do enrollment. They're not there to help you to be a fiduciary in terms of where your money should go.
Yeah, and so just to kind of put a bow on the 401k piece, you've got the fees that the company that's managing the 401k, so you're paying those, but then depending on what fund you're in, there's going to be expense ratios
Yep.
on those fees or on those funds, and that's where you're saying be careful, because some funds, international funds, for example, they always
Yeah.
have a higher
Yeah.
expense ratio.
Yeah,
Because
and they should. I mean,
they should, because it's more expensive to manage one of them, an international
But
fund.
talk about target date funds, Mark.
Yeah, so target date funds are
Let's say what a target date fund
Yeah.
is.
okay. So you're retiring 2060. So your target date is Vanguard whatever 2060 or Fidelity whatever 20. So it has the
Everybody's got them.
Yeah.
Target date.
They're super
And they
common
drive
thing.
you to them. I mean, they want you there, and Mark's going to tell you
But
why.
their expense ratios are huge. They are huge. And what we don't agree with probably them is they are actively managed. Obviously, they're changing over time.
They rebalance them.
But they're rebalancing. They hold a bunch of different all they're doing is they're a basket, and all they're holding is baskets of other mutual funds.
They're a fund of funds.
Yeah, they fund these other funds, and guess what? Those still have expense ratios that they're holding in the fund.
And every one of those you can go buy individually in your 401k.
Yeah.
So
And-
they're basically doubling the expense fees because they're paying the expense fees on the fund that is funding their fund,
Right.
and then charging an
So
expense
you've
fee
got
there
this,
too.
you got this a new representative, lady or young man, old lady or old man, but a representative that's just been told at the home office when he's going out to enroll 401ks, hey, just these target date funds they've all been approved. They're by our back office, by our compliance. Just tell folks to do that, and they think, okay, that's great. Well, so there's a bond fund. Every one of them same, not the same percentages, but there's a bond fund, there's a growth fund, there's a growth and income fund, there's a balance fund, there's a bond fund, there's overseas, and within those, each of those funds have a fee. They put all those funds together, and then they charge a fee to have that target date set on it. So you're getting hit double when, if you just pay attention, you can set and buy the same ones and save probably 35 basis points.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and the thing that drives me a little crazy about that whole situation is, a lot of those you don't need to hold. So, there's certain things in target date
You're
funds. it's
25 years old,
yeah,
you don't need 12 different funds.
No, and there's usually some really good options that you could get pointed to in your 401k.
Well, let's play Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett would say, you find the one that says Index 500.
Yeah.
If you're a young investor and you buy that.
Yeah. Yep.
If you don't know what you're doing, you buy that and you get out of the way.
And then the way I always understood those the target date funds, sorry, I go back to the TSP that I was in, it was called the life cycle. But the target date funds, the whole deal is that you start aggressive, and as you get closer to retirement, you get more and more conservative. But I think that at least from my perspective, I believe it's your guys' perspective as well, is you don't need to get more and more conservative as you get older. You kind of need to stay aggressive to stay ahead of that inflation that we always talk about.
They're actually coming out with articles now in the things that Mark and I read where they're talking about what a mistake that is. And so, you'll hear all kinds of commission-driven folks talking about guaranteed income and getting that guarantee. And people will lock a ton of money up in a situation where it has no opportunity to stay ahead of inflation. And it's quite honestly, we'll see it where they've wrapped up a huge percentage of assets to guarantee income for maybe somebody that's got military
Right.
and retirement.
Already has plenty of secure
already
income.
has secure income, and they're worried. They need to be worried about what's inflation going to do to my buying power.
Yeah, and all they do is use fear. It's like,
Yeah.
your money, the market's going to tank for 8 years, and you're not going to have any money, and blah blah blah, and buy this because of that. Well,
Yeah.
you can have some money on the side
Standard
to pay
line
for
is-
those,
yeah.
and they're just using fear to sell a lot of products, just like we see everything in the news now. It's like fear is what.
Fear sells.
Yeah, fear
Fear
sells.
sells.
And
Somebody saying the market went up 1/10% today doesn't mean a thing. But if somebody goes, the market was down today 125 points, which on the Dow is nothing.
yeah,
Market was down 125 points today. Well, average American is going, oh, something's going on.
yeah,
And it's just the movement of the market. And I go back to when I first went in the industry, it was cancer insurance. But when I was a little, I don't remember this, but my mother used to talk about polio insurance. It was huge. It
Yeah.
was fear driven. And fear. The Americans' largest fear is running out of income in retirement. And the way you're going to run out of income is if inflation eats it up.
yep,
What stays ahead of inflation over time? United States equity.
yep. Well, and your inflation and your incredibly expensive fees that cost to buy those products that
Right,
they scare you into.
Well, Mark, let's talk about that. So we kind of addressed what those fees are. How can people protect themselves from fees? What can they do?
Oh, they need to be aware. I mean, that's the biggest thing is just having the wherewithal, having the like, hey, I'm going to go in there
The
and
knowledge.
the knowledge that I'm going to go check. I'm going to see what I'm paying. I'm going to ask somebody that maybe, like, for example, we have people all the time that come in and be like, hey, can you just check out our portfolio and see what we're paying? I don't really know how to look for these things, especially, people have heard Bob talk on fees before, and they will bring in stuff, and, it's easy to show them what you're paying. Like, holy
Right.
cow.
And that is one thing I love about you guys, because somebody comes in, you're not going to turn them away and say, no, we need you to, we need to have a client relationship with you. You'll actually sit down with them and tell them what they got. And that is something that I've loved about you guys for a long time. I know that we did that with you quite some time ago.
Yeah. What was my advice to you?
Keep doing what you're doing.
Yep.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
so-
It wasn't come put your money here with me. It was keep doing what you're doing. You're killing it.
Yep.
I remember
And as advisors and as fiduciaries, that's how Mark and I feel about what we're supposed to do. And I don't think that makes us special, but it does make us a wee bit unusual in terms of what we see. We've actually had client, we've had people sit down with us and bring us their portfolio, and they'll call up their rep in between our appointments. They'll say, how much am I paying in fees? And the rep will tell them, and they'll come back in and say, well, he said we're paying around X. And then we'll show them, with the exact information what their annual cost is. And they'll say, well, it's twice that. And we'll go, yeah. And really, your rep doesn't even really understand that. Because in school, they don't talk, when you go to XYZ fund school, they don't talk about their fees. They talk about their return.
Yeah.
And a lot of times mutual funds, and people don't realize this, they talk about their return before fees.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we did that, Mark, we'd get shot.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
but mutual funds can do that. There's so many things they can do. If I own XYZ fund and they want to advertise on the NFL, I'm helping pay for that.
Sure.
If Bob and Mark are advertising on the football field, on a banner at the football field, Bob and Mark paid for that. No, our clients did not pay for that. It doesn't come out of our what we charge people, and but we don't charge postage. Mutual funds, you're paying the postage within your expense. So if they have to mail out,
Yep. Part of your 12
yeah,
would be, yep.
there's just stuff everywhere.
It sounds like education is probably the main thing.
Yeah.
Educate yourself, get help if you're not. And some people just either are confused by investing or it's just something they don't want to do.
Yep.
That's where you guys can come in.
Yeah.
And educate yourself, talk to professionals. If you want to talk to these young men, you can go to,
We'll average it out.
Schwartz Financial, BobSchwartzFinancial.com. Once again, they have offices in Victoria and Silver Lake, Kansas. And watching us on YouTube, listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Subscribe, give us a thumbs up, like. Until next time, thanks for joining us. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks.